I'm joined now by Ghidey Zeratsion. He is one of the founders of TPLF and joins us from Norway. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to me.
Thank you also for having me.
Absolutely. So, you're one of the originals, and I think it's so important to get your take in this conversation around what's going on in Ethiopia. So I just want to start by asking you, what was the original goal and the original idea when TPLF was formed, and what do you think it has become now?
The TPLF's movement was an extension of the Ethiopian student movement. So at that time, the issues were the question of democracy, national cohesion, land reform, and change of government. So the TPLF had all these goals when it went to the jungle or to the field. With this, of course, at the beginning, fighters were humble, very disciplined, and it has also shown some reforms, land reform at the beginning. And it has been giving some services like medical services, offering some, it is in a remote area where they have never had an access to such things. So it was, and also justice, security, because there are a lot of bandits around in the, in the remote areas. So it was controlling these bandits and giving them security. So at this stage, it had attracted a large support from the people. And contrary to that, it is the government of the military government of the Derg, which was brutal and was repressive. So it didn't take time for TPLF actually to get hearts and minds of the people and get a big support. It did. Then, TPLF was one of the movements in Ethiopia. There was the Eritrean Liberation Movement as well. So combined forces defeated the army, and TPLF took power. Now, when it took power, then things have changed, completely changed. I mean, they have taken a different turn. The issues of democracy, it was not democratic, it was dictatorial. It believes in one-party system. It does not allow other parties to operate. It was corrupt. It was like a mafia organization, you can say. It was looting the country. It was divisive as well. In order to stay in power, it has been playing the different ethnic differences against each other. It was divisive. It was also polarizing these differences and conflicts in the different regions. There were torture, human rights abuses, all this. And then as a result, so it was in 2018, there was a public uprising, which has thrown them out of power. Then after they were deposed or they were pushed out from power, they went back to Tigray. They want to come back to take power by force or by any means. And then they have been mobilizing the people of Tigray. And it has been preparing to take power by force. And then it was trying to use the Tigrayans as a cannon fodder. It's just people are dispensable. It is not so many, it doesn't bother about the people. And now, as we see, just now, it is a terrorist organization. purely terrorist organization. But now it is in Amhara region, it is looting there, killing people, raping women, distracting institutions and different developmental institutions as well. So just now, it is a terrorist organization. So TPLF has evolved from a very modest, very humble, disciplined organization into what you see now as a terrorist organization, undisciplined, and a lot of looting and destruction.
So I want to contextualize this even further. So just for those who are watching that may not know, TPLF stands for the Tigray People's Liberation Front. It was founded around 1975 by a group of students. I want to talk about how easily it was to mobilize then and why, and how easy it is to mobilize now and maybe some of the differences. So back then, we know when you look back at the reasons that you helped form this group, what was really true for the people then that got them to mobilize? So obviously there was the communist government that we call Derg, and the people of Tigray felt what?
You know, at that time, of course, the question of lack of democracy in the country was generally a question of democracy, human rights, and also some land reforms generally on the economic aspect. Land reform to a certain extent is fulfilled, to a certain extent, not much. Of course, we can see that later on, this has been abused by the TPLF itself, because they say the land is state-owned, and they have been displacing farmers and giving them little compensation, and they were making business out of it. So the land issue is not yet completely solved. Of course, land is given to the farmers, peasants, but there should have been other supplementary change or supports to make this effective. So like innovative ways of farming, support with fertilizers, and probably also irrigation and other things. This has not been done. This has not been delivered. So on economic aspects, actually, it's not much done to, especially to the people of Tigray. These people, they have completely forgotten the people when they went to Addis. They were making business, they were rich, and they had a lot of money. In fact, they owned the biggest corporations like Effort and the rest in the country. They had a lot of money, but they didn't invest in Tigray because it was not profitable in Tigray. They were after profit, not after the concerns of developing the people. So they have invested in areas where they get money. That's what they did. So the Tigrayans didn't get anything from in terms of economy. They didn't gain. So there is still that question of economy, the question of democracy still. This was a very suppressive, I mean, it follows the most controlled type of system. It believes in one-party system, and it has a network down to the bottom of the family level where it controls the people. So question of democracy is not yet achieved. So this can be issues that would mobilize people. In terms of national question, where they were at the helm of power, the Tigrayans were at the helm of the power. Who could they blame now on the national question? They cannot blame anybody. In fact, they were dominant. They say they have established a federal system, But this federal system was not a real federal system. It was manipulated by TPLF. So if the complaint on national question comes, it is from the other regions. It cannot come from the Tigrayans. They have been in power for the last 27 years.
So there's a couple of things I want to address. There's so much here. One, you talked about how TPLF, which was a Tigrayan-led movement that went from 1975 till the Western back overthrow of the communist government in 91. You say once they got into power that they abandoned the people of Tigray. They didn't really develop Tigray. So my question is, how is it that if that is true, and there's indication, yes, that absolutely that is true, how were they able to mobilize Tigrayans again?
Yeah, at this time, when they were pushed out of power, they left Ethiopia into a chaos. Then there was conflict. TPLF lives on creating divisions among the people. It is divisive. It polarizes the differences. So the moment they were pushed out, then Ethiopia was in a turmoil. Everywhere there was this national conflict. And the Tigrayans were also negatively seen in regard to the positions they had in the government and the role they played there. So they were, we can say, any region points at the Tigrayans. They were the ones who keep us like this, who have been oppressing us, and they have been the beneficiaries of this government and all these things. So then in this conflict, in this kind of conflicts, there were conflicts between Somali people and the Oromo, the Afars and the Somalis. The Oromos against the Amharas against other nationalities. It was a kind of chaos. This is what the legacy they left to Ethiopia. And then, yes, in this process, the Tigrayans were also affected. They have been attacked in some areas. They have been displaced. And they have been also looted. And then this is what happened to the Tigrayans as well, just like the other people. But the TPLF exploited this very much. It said that the current regime is against the Tigrayans, the Amharas are against the Tigrayans. There were a lot of people also who were displaced to Tigray from Amhara. So it was a result of their the system they established that this happened. But they presented it to the Tigrayan people as if it happened to the Tigrayans alone. So they created this bitterness, hatred against others, especially against the Amharas. So this has appealed, gives them at least a space to maneuver in Tigray. After that, of course, the tension between the Amharas and the Tigrayans, because of some neighboring disputes also, like Walqait and other areas, that has been active. So they should have solved it when they were in power. They didn't. Then the extension of that continued. So they tried to use these mechanisms and they were mobilizing the people that we shall prevail, we prevail with our forces, with our power, with Kaltsemna and all these things. And they were brainwashing the people as well. They are special people. They have defeated the Derg army. They are undefeatable, special heroes in the area. This is the kind of mentality they have created in the people. And that everything they want, they can achieve it through power. This is what they have achieved in this society now. But that's what you see. So they have conflicts with Eritrea. They have conflict with Amhara. They have conflict with Abiy in general, because they want to take the power. So they have all these enemies. at the same time, and they mean that they are undefeatable. They can manage to defeat all this.
Yeah, to your point, I think one of the most detrimental and concerning points is this idea that they have passed on, that you can get everything by force, that you don't have to negotiate. Even we saw after the federal government declared a humanitarian ceasefire in June, some of the demands that came out of that leadership just seemed to be completely uncompromising, considering the position that they were in. And it seems to have been passed down to the people that is this a zero-sum game. Either we're back at the top, or we go all the way into Addis, or we don't compromise. And it just seems to have such a detrimental effect on the people. I want to talk a little bit about why you left the party. So you left the region in '87 through Sudan. At what point, and what were some of the circumstances that led you to say, this is no longer something I can stand behind? It's become different than what I went into it thinking it was.
At least in the organization, I was a member of the Central Committee, Politburo member. I was the vice chairman of the organization as well. So at least as I know, to the extent that I have been in the organization, there was freedom of discussion, democratic atmosphere, at least in the leadership. We were taking any issue, discuss any issue without fear, and we can debate on things. But when in 1977, during the formation of the Marxist-Leninist Party, then I had some differing views, disagreements in some of the issues. Some were ideological, and some were, of course, on a tactical basis, on tactical issues. Then I have debated this in the Congress of the Marxist-Leninist Party. But a certain group in the organization have made a clique, and they were conspiring, actually. Then they tried to, I was alone against many in these issues. So even then, I was elected to the Central Committee of the Marxist-Leninist Party in the Congress. Everybody has raised his hand in supporting me to be elected. After 2 days, the Central Committee had a meeting and demoted me from the Central Committee. It's just even the people who were invited to the Congress were there. They were not. They didn't leave even to their respective places. They were there. They gathered them and they told them that they have demoted me and Aregawi, also Dr. Aregawi. There were some questions, critical questions. Why did you elect them in the first place? What happened these 2 days? We have elected them because we have seen your hands. So all of you have raised your hands in electing them. What happened? They said that we have decided, and then that's what they ended. So anyway, after this, I wanted to present my disagreement to the fighters. They didn't allow me. It took me 1.5 years. I think I stayed there since from 84, 85 to 86, some years, yeah. Then finally, they said they decided also the Central Committee had a meeting. I had opposed them also in one conference. I have raised and tried to explain my dissent or my disagreement, and then they didn't allow me to present myself there. So after that, they decided that they have expelled me from the party. And I said, even with this difference, in as far as this is a national organization, I can continue in the national front, not in the Marxist-Leninist party, but I can continue in the national front. They said no. So I was forced to leave. That's how I leave to Sudan, and then I came to Norway.
And you stayed there for a couple of decades after, right? I want to just clarify sort of one of the points of contention that you're talking about. So what you were suggesting was not to declare themselves as a Marxist-Leninist group so publicly, because the environment at the time, especially if they were looking for the backing of the West, that would not be in their favor. And so there was resistance to that, which the irony of that is ultimately when they came into power in 91, the whole Marxist-Leninist ideology just completely went away, right?
Yes, exactly. That was one of the points. And also the related to the relationship with EPLF. They said they have to raise out our differences and campaign against them. I said, we shall explain when we are asked, but we don't have to campaign against them. Then that was also another point of contention in this matter. But also on the ideological issue, you know, right at this moment, they were declaring that followers of Albanian Marxist party. You know, at the beginning, we were calling the National Democratic Revolution. That's a China model. And then later on, there has been a lot of debate in communist parties, communist groups about the difference, what is the difference between the People's Democratic Party and the National Democratic Party. So they said they are followers of the Albanian party, Hoxha party. Then we have differences also on what is People's Democratic Revolution mean. So we had a long discussion around that, a difference on that. And in fact, I have written an article that time, which says that the Marxist-Leninist party of Tigray is blinking to the left, but the course is to the right. I have written that article actually in Amharic and Tigray. So we had a difference on that too. So to tell you frankly, this was only just, you know, for number one, it was not essential that this could be a point of difference at that time. But this clique wants us to take power as a party leaders, and so they have to push me and Dr. Aregawi as well, creating some pretexts or some excuses. So that was the reason. So I left, and even up to now, I know Meles knows what he says, but the rest, they don't know what exactly the differences are. They don't even know it now.
That's very interesting. So I just want to clarify, EPLF, I believe, is the Eritrean People's Liberation Front. So there was an issue of how to associate with that group. That was one point of contention. We talked about the Marxist-Leninist Declaration or the Albanian Communism Declaration. But correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is it really wasn't that big of a point of contention, or it didn't have to be. It was just a matter of intolerance that made that a splitting point, right? And so if that's the case, I'm curious what you think about the growing intolerance, or what appears to be the growing intolerance within TPLF, and what that has done to the party up to this point.
Yeah, then from that point, from that time on, people were afraid to express themselves. And it created actually a party of a clique, and finally it became a party of one single man, the Meles. So that's how it evolved, if you see it. So people were afraid; they cannot express their views, they cannot go outside the line of the party. And even if some people, after I left, I heard that many people who have been raising some questions which looks like mine. They have been harassed, or some of them imprisoned, detained. That was how they treated people. So this was a departure, really a departure line for TPLF. Though I wouldn't say we were fully democratic, but we had some kind of democratic atmosphere, at least among the leadership, but completely disappeared later on. And it created a one dominant person. You can say he was like an emperor, actually.